Prime Minister Modi is in Avion in France for the G7 summit. The Prime Minister is scheduled to meet US President Donald Trump today, apart from also holding a bilateral with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, as well as a trilateral engagement with Merz, as well as European Union Council Chief Ursula von der Leyen. My colleague Megha Sharma is live from Avion. All right, Megha, hi. How are you doing there in Avion? Today is this all-important bilateral that we are looking at. Has a time being announced for that meeting? And are we looking at a press briefing, joint address afterwards?
All right, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump are slated to meet today. It is going to be a 45-minute long meeting. This meeting, in fact, is going to take place at 2:45 p.m. local time. Prior to that, there are the other two, another bilateral, which is with the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The second trilateral is going to take place with the EU President Ursula von der Leyen, as well as the EU Commission President Antonio Costa. Of course, the most important, the most a significant meeting that takes place on the sidelines of the G7 summit for India and for America is going to be that bilateral between US President and the Indian Prime Minister. Of course, trade deal is something that's on the table. We have been trying to sign it for the past 16 months, have not been able to successfully do so. But as per sources, we're getting to know that we are at the last mile. There are loose ends that are to be tied up. And right after that, it's just a few weeks of time when the deal is ready to be signed in presence of both the leaders, both the heads of governments from India and United States of America. Meanwhile, if you can take a look at the visuals on your screens, there is a working session, the first session of the day number 3, the final day of G7 summit here in Avion, where Prime Minister Modi has just arrived. So Prime Minister Modi is right now, if you can take a look at these visuals behind me, the Prime Minister Modi, in fact, has arrived. He is meeting all the heads of governments. We see that the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, he's shook hands with Lula da Silva, the President of Brazil. He is right now greeting the South Korean Prime Minister as well. So here, in just a short while, we see, of course, right now we see there's like a side hug that can be seen between UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Prime Minister Modi. Of course, there is an FTA that has been signed between the two countries that had happened late last year. So that camaraderie and bonhomie is very reflective of the warm relationship that both countries share and the both leaders of both the countries share. So these are the important developments. Of course, it is important to note that this particular working session is going to be focusing on the theme of building effective, inclusive and sustainable economic growth for all countries. It is also primarily a focus to be brought back to the Chinese threat when it comes to taking over the large majority of the market, not just in Southeast Asia, in the Indian subcontinent, in Europe, in America, in South America, in West Asia as well. So this is going to be an important session. But we have to keep a very, very close eye on what is going to be discussed in those crucial, important, precious 45 minutes when both the leaders of India and United States of America come to face. Trade deal, of course, tariff and trade goes hand in hand. So it is going to be important to note that tariffs are going to be discussed. At this point in time, all tariffs on India that had been unilaterally imposed by America, by the US Trump administration, are null and void in wake of the US Supreme Court, calling them unwarranted and striking them down, the executive order that had been issued by US President Donald Trump. So there is of course fresh negotiation and what percentage of the tariffs on which all goods are going to be imposed by America, and in turn how is India going to be countering that with the tariffs to protect its local producers, particularly the agricultural and the dairy market.
Right, Megha, behind you, of course, we're getting in the visuals as well, where Prime Minister Modi is greeting different leaders of the world. If you can once again take us through what's really happening behind you there. We're seeing Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also arriving at the summit and holding some conversations. Who are the big leaders there? And when is this working session that's about to start? What is the agenda of this one right now?
Right, absolutely. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was right now just having a conversation with his Kenyan counterpart. We also see External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar right now, and beside him is the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Also, yesterday was a very, light-hearted meeting that took place amongst all these leaders, of course, including Prime Minister Modi. We right now see that the Prime Minister is in that conversation with Antonio Costa, who is the European Union president. And as I was talking about yesterday, it was a heartwarming visual that came on the screens where the Prime Minister greeted President Donald Trump. It was a firm handshake. There were smiles that were exchanged. This was right before the working session of the G7 plus nations that was taking place. There was no hug, which is, traditionally the protocol that is taken by both the leaders, as has been seen in the past. It's been 16 months since they last met each other. This was in DC in February 2025. We used to see that warm hug, holding of hands even, that used to happen between US President Donald Trump and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That was missing in the picture. And it is sort of natural, because the 16 months have been a difficult time period for both the countries. What with Operation Sindoor and, US President siding Pakistan, hyphenating India with Pakistan, taking all claim and credit for the peace, for the ceasefire that was established between both countries. And then, of course, right after that, those extremely heavy unilateral tariffs that really, broke India's back, broke India's industries back. This negatively impacted the exporter industry over here in India. But now India is cautious in moving forward and dealing with the Trump administration, dealing with US President Donald Trump, even though there have been these overtures that have been seen from US President Donald Trump himself, putting out posts on his Truth Social platform saying that he loves India, he loves the people of India, he and Prime Minister Modi are great friends. India's diplomacy since the last 16 months, in wake of these ups and downs that India has seen with America, has been to be more cautious, be more restrained, be more diplomatic, use diplomacy as a very strong tool to deal with the very temperamental, mercurial president that America has seen after many decades.
Absolutely. And Megha, like you were talking, they are meeting after a big gap of about 16 months, and we are looking at the last differences to be ironed out as far as the trade deal is concerned. There is also the question of the tariffs, but very importantly, Prime Minister Modi has also raised the issue of the safety of seafarers and securing safe sea routes. Especially 3 of our Indian have lost their lives. How have the world leaders reacted to that message of the Prime Minister?
Well, in fact, there has been no condolences that have been expressed by any of the world leaders, let alone the G7 leaders who are present over here. But yes, the Prime Minister raised this important matter in front of the G7 plus leaders during the working session that had taken place. He said that seafarers need to be given protection. They cannot be targeted unilaterally. Their lives are precious, and they should be able to transit through the maritime routes, including the Gulf, there's a Strait of Hormuz, freely, without any restrictions. And he said all of this while US President Donald Trump was sitting right beside him. So this was, although he did not name US President Donald Trump or the United States of America or the US Navy that targeted these seafarers that led to the death of 3 Indians in that commercial vessel. I think that hint was clear enough to be able to send the message across to the right people, to the right countries, to the right military forces of what happened as an attack on the vessel that led to the death of 3 innocent seafarers. These 3 innocent sailors was something that has not gone down well with India. Whether the Prime Minister raises this issue during that bilateral meeting is something that is going to be eagerly anticipated in wake of this growing opposition within the political parties. Within the political parties in the opposition, we have seen there are, anguish and rage amongst the people within the country domestically against America and what has happened last week.
Absolutely, something that Indians are really looking forward to for this message.